We have a guest joining us in the studio. Kipkoech Ngetich is an advocate of the High Court. He is a land lawyer. Not that he represents land in cases in court. He represents people, I'm assuming, and companies and entities that deal with land. Good morning, Wakili.
Good morning to you, Eric Latif and Uko, and all the viewers of Spice FM.
Karibu sana to the hot seats. That's the hot seat of the Situation Room. How is it? Comfortable?
Yes, so far so good.
Very good. Very good. We want to talk about the land is basically an emotive subject in this country. And I'm sure you've litigated very many cases that just are diverse, from people being defrauded outright, from double allocation of pieces of land, maybe in other cases where people come and each of them has a genuine title deed and all those things. And then lately we've been seeing matters of leases expiring and the current leaseholders being unaware of things that have happened at the registry and leases being transferred to other people. Big issues. But Karibu, let me welcome you with the day's proverb. This week's proverbs are from South Africa. And today's proverb says, a grave is not dug until a person is dead.
Nice, really.
Sounds obvious, doesn't it? I mean, it's like, but duh. A grave is not dug until a person is dead. Mm-hmm. But what do you think it means? The deeper meaning.
Thank you very much. It would appear to me like that is a proverb which has two meanings. The easy meaning is that in most African situations, you would have to wait for somebody. You don't anticipate death. That appears to be the deeper meaning. And I think that is what most African states, that is what most African personalities would do. You do not anticipate your death. You serve until the Lord comes for you. The other deeper meaning would mean that matters of life, matters of when you're going to serve your tier of duty in this world, are issues beyond you. That appears to me to be the deeper meaning, that is the deeper impression of that proverb. And therefore, if these are issues that are beyond you, then you do not have any business trying to stave off or trying to overdo yourself. Thank you.
Sounds good, doesn't it?
Yep. I didn't see that meaning there.
Yeah.
No, there it is.
There it is. It's a good one. When someone says you're a land lawyer, what do you mean exactly?
Thank you very much. Lawyers in this country, generally with a degree in law, are trained on matters of how to deal with land, how to secure the interests of landowners, and how to ensure that there are clients, how to ensure that transactions on land are secure. At the another level, you may decide as a practitioner to pursue knowledge, to pursue practice, to concentrate on matters of land. If you decide to practice on matters of land, you're going to court on matters of land, you're concentrating in conveyancing, concentrating in ensuring that purchasers of land have secured their titles, banks have secured their interests, then you may qualify as a land lawyer out of practice. There are those people who, instead of concentrating on practice of land matters to become land lawyers, may also decide to take up teaching land law in the university, in colleges and other institutions, so that every morning, every evening, every afternoon, they are teaching, they are researching on matters of land. So I think there are two perspectives of telling who is a land lawyer. This is a person who concentrates in the practice of law, in the strict sense, in what he does every morning, every afternoon, every evening, or by way of teaching and researching more on land law. I am the first one. I practice a lot of land law in my litigation, in cases that I file and prosecute in court, and what I do for my clients, I do a lot of land law, and therefore I qualify to be a land lawyer.
What kind of cases would present themselves then that needed to be adjudicated in the court of law? What kinds of things are we looking at that would arise in some kind of conflict?
Thank you very much. A lot of times, and this is the situation now in the Environment and Land Court in Kenya, a lot of times we have matters to do with ownership. These are the bulk of cases, these are the heavy cases that deal with land. For example, you might find a situation where somebody is saying, I bought this land, I purchased this land, I paid, we did a sale agreement, but if it's an agricultural land in Kenya, for example, there are a number of requirements that you are supposed to meet. Number one, you need to ensure that if you're purchasing land, let's say, for example, in Machakos, if you're purchasing land, let's say, for example, in Kajiado, before it's transferred to you, even after the sale agreement has been done, even after you've paid, you're supposed to secure consent from the Land Control Board. Upon securing the consent from the Land Control Board, the law requires that you pay what we call duty, and specifically stamp duty, so that the land registrar may then proceed and do a title in your name. That is what has been litigated on 100 times. It has gone all the way to the Court of Appeal in this country. And if you look at these cases that are before the court, you find situations where people purchased land, they paid, they did a sale agreement, but they didn't get a consent from the Land Control Board and never paid stamp duty, and therefore they didn't secure titles, and therefore they will not be treated in law as landowners because they never completed the process and are not therefore owners of those lands. They go to court, and most of the times they would be told you didn't get consent, you did not pay stamp duty, and therefore you did not acquire land, and that is not your land. That is number one for agricultural land. If you want to acquire a plot in Nairobi, for example, over and above what I have said, doing a sale agreement and paying the seller, you're also supposed to get consent from the chief land registrar. You're supposed to pay stamp duty again. And this is so fundamental because every time a court of law, particularly Environment and Land Court, is dealing with matters of purchase and ownership of land, they would want to know if you got a consent from for purposes of commercial plots, if you got a consent from the chief land registrar and or the land registrar for that matter, and if you paid stamp duty. Stamp duty is so fundamental because it's not only a requirement of law, but it's also a source of income to the government of Kenya. If you don't acquire that, you will not get a title. If you acquire a title, the title may be nullified for being procedurally and substantively wanting. Yes.
This consent from the chief land registrar, in what form does it come?
A consent is in form of what looks like a letter, a very simple letter. It is not wordy. It has very few words, but it has the signature of the land registrar of the respective district of land administration. We have what we call the district land registrars in various parts of the country. If you're in Machakos, if you're in Kajiado, there is a land registry. The person heading such a registry is called the district land registrar.
So you must have that, and then the title now will also be in your name.
Yes, that is the only way.
So those are two separate documents.
Those are two separate. Those are the consent from the land registrar. Previously, used to be from the Commissioner of Lands, is separate from the consent from the Land Control Board. A lot of times, the consent from the Land Control Board, and this applies only to agricultural land, is normally signed by the Assistant County Commissioner or signed by the Deputy County Commissioner, who is the de facto chair of Land Control Board.
That's a former DO.
Yes, an Assistant County Commissioner is the former DO. The Deputy County Commissioner is the former DC. Yes.
So what kind of problems are we looking at in Kenya today? Then when it comes to, you talk about this stamp duty paid or not paid. You talk about then acquisition of land that could have belonged to you at some point and then went into the ownership of somebody else. But across board, what are some of the problems now that lead to some of these cases that we see?
Thank you very much. The problems that we have in the land sector, truly speaking, are elephant. I would say they are mammoth. In fact, today, and in the agrarian society, in the society where we come from, most of us grew up knowing that the investments that you invest in are livestock. If you're lucky and you have slightly more money, the next level of investment is in land, and then you move to plots. Kenyans have generally refused to move away from livestock, land, and plots. Not so many of us would want to consider shares in stock exchange, consider deposits in SACCOs, and therefore we have all retreated to land. And today, as we're talking, land in Kenya are matters of do and die. I mean, do or die. If you do not have land, you consider yourself as a dying person. If you have land, you have to fight for it because of these problems that I'm going to explain. Number one is that in Kenya today, we have a situation at the lands offices where land registrars, in collusion with land cartels in this country, and I could quote a litany of examples, are creating duplicate registers. Eric Latif owns a title in Kitengela, for example. You go to the registry in Kajiado, and you find that your title is reflected in the register. If it's a plot, for that matter, we would call it if it's a plot, we would call it the white card. That is the register of your documentation. That is what captures all the transactions leading to your title. But because, as I've said, matters of land are do or die. Those who don't have are dying to have them. Those who do not have are dying to have them. Those who have these parcels of land are also dying to protect them. So the situation is that you have your title. You probably you've fenced your parcel of land in Kitengela, but you've not developed. Overnight, my good sister here, because she's taller and networked, approaches the same lands. Another register is created and a title issued and even backdated. Subsequently, your register is destroyed. So that when tomorrow you go and do a search, it will come blank and you would be told, sorry, Mr. Latif, we do not have a record of this title. We do not know you. Meanwhile, my sister here would be constructing, doing up a 10-story building, which is coming up very swiftly. You rush to court. When you rush to court with a copy of your title and maybe a search which was done in the year 2020, she comes flashing not only a title, a certificate of lease, and a search, but also a copy of the white card. And the land registrar would swear an affidavit and say she's the owner. She's the owner of this land. What then happens subsequently? Land Registration Act of 2012 says that evidence from the land registrar is conclusive evidence of ownership of land. So who loses? Eric Latif certainly loses the parcel of land, and that is the situation that we have in this country, and it's a very sad situation.
But don't we have chronology? I mean, is it only the white paper that shows the history of this particular piece of land? Wouldn't there be anything else that shows before Ndu purportedly bought this piece of land, this was the owner previously? And this is how the land was demarcated. Kitengela was then 50 by 100s 30 years ago. It was bigger pieces of land. How did this land change from agricultural land to commercial land? How was it subdivided into 50 by 100s? How did Ndu acquire the 50 by 100? Isn't there a record?
Thank you very much. You ask a very valid question. We're talking about cartels, and though it is used figuratively, politically, to mean imaginary enemies, as a land lawyer, I would tell you cartels are people, very powerful people. If they are not high up there in government, they are closer to the big people in government. You would have the history, and as a practitioner in this field, there are so many areas where you can trace the history. For example, you can go to the director of surveys and you call for the initial registry index map. The registry index map would show when this title was created for the very first time. But these cartels are able to manipulate the director of surveys, and that map again is destroyed.
What?
You would also have evidence of payment of rates if you are within the municipality or if you are within the city. You go to the city county government of Nairobi rate section, and you would have a record of how you've been paying rates for the longest time, and this would be evidence that you've been asserting for your ownership. But then again, as has happened in the past, it can be destroyed. You could still go to Kenya Revenue Authority and trace the moment you paid stamp duty, and you may want to know when Madam Ndu paid for a stamp duty, which would have happened later. But we are in a situation where we're relying on manual documents, and that is why I think digitization may help us if it is not arrested by cartels. So historically, it is very easy to trace your ownership. But I'm talking about people who are networked and people who are able to destroy multifaceted documentation that would help you. We wouldn't be having a problem in this country if our institutions were functioning optimally. Let them, forget about them performing excellently, just functioning optimally, because you would go here, you would get history of what you've been paying. You would have a history of when the registry index map was issued, but these documents are destroyed. And you would find a person who acquired land in 1992 helpless and looking as useless as it can be, because we have systems that are not functioning in the country.
So what is the recourse? Because, there must be something. If we're talking about individuals who, I guess the laws of nature, you might lose a document. You might go on one day and the equipment is not working, and then you do not have proof of ownership. And you've already said that, it's difficult in terms of what's happening, because it could be heavy-handed individuals who are on the other side of this. So what is the recourse for these individuals who genuinely, they own this land? Genuinely it is theirs, but for some reason or another they do not have the documentation to show it, even if according to the law, documentation is ownership. How do you help? How do these individuals get help?
Thank you very much. The first port of call to be assisted is to sue the government for compensation. If you have a copy of the title and you have a search, that shows that at some point in time you conducted an investigation, and the search showed that you own this land. Under the Land Registration Act, Section 26. Yeah. And previously, the Registered Land Act, Cap 300, which has since been repealed, you could very easily sue the government and get compensation. Of course, as to whether you will get that compensation from the government, whether it's 10 million, 20 million, or 50 million sooner, is a different thing altogether. Because when you sue government, it's like you're opening a can of worms. It will take you several kilometers. It will take you several struggles for the government to be compensated. But one option really, if the government was functioning, would be to get compensation from the government. That is option number one. Option number two, and this is doable, I have tried it before, is to go the direction Mr. Latif was talking about. Number one, go to the registry index map at the director of surveys. When was it opened? In whose name was the mutation done? You go to the rating offices in the respective county governments, and it would be shown clearly that you've been paying rates. You could still go to the Ministry of Lands and show that I paid stamp duty several years. So it's not a difficult task to prove. The only problem is if these cartels decide that they will make sure that Ndu is done and done completely, and they go into these offices.
Like
and,
Ndu could go to heaven.
Yes, I hear nowadays that
it's an option.
Going to heaven is an option of resolving problems. So it's something that is possible to be resolved. It's resolvable. The only problem is that it would require quite some resources. Litigation in court against the government, or going to offices, camping in offices. And I would say, Latif and Madam Ndu, that our offices in this country have to be pushed. Thank you.
Sounds like there's no recourse.
Yeah. So there is no recourse. There's nothing you can do. Because if you had previously told us that documentation is, according to the law, documentation is proof of ownership.
At the land registry.
At the land registry, if I have documentation, that shows that I am the owner. But we also know from what you've said that it's possible that somebody could have stolen your title, it could have been lost, but you're not able to prove that. So if you have the short end of the stick, you have the short end of the stick. There's nothing you can do.
And in fact, you'll be labeled the one who's trying to steal this piece of land.
Yeah.
Indeed, the situation as it were is very dire. I am banking on the digitization that is ongoing.
Okay.
But then again, as I have said, there's one thing that we need to do, and I think this is going to be the silver bullet. We go for fraudsters who are outside government. We deal with people who forge documents who are out there. We deal with land grabbers who are out there. We have never dealt decisively with government officers who collude to destroy maps, to destroy registers at the Ministry of Lands. We need to deal with these people a little bit ferociously.
Just as harshly.
Yes,
In fact, those ones, you don't give them the first two options. Third option only.
You give them the third option, yes. And we are quoting a very serious authority on this. The third option is coming from the highest authority in the land.
Bas.
Yes.
The survey of Kenya. Right, when you talk about land, we only just think of the land registry, but we also do not many times think about the survey of Kenya and the importance of the surveys and the maps that the survey of Kenya holds. Just tell us briefly about that and how important they are.
Thank you very much, Latif and Madam Du. The Directorate of Survey is very, very important. And the other day, the Law Society of Kenya, Institute of Surveyors of Kenya, Kenya Bankers Association, and the Ministry of Lands had a memorandum on matters of georeferencing. If there is no survey that has been done in this country, there is no land. I mean, you can't own any land. Before a title is issued, there has to be a survey. There has to be specification on where this parcel of land is. And I tell my clients every day that before you purchase a parcel of land, get a surveyor, go to the ground, purchase registry index map from the Directorate of Survey. Let the beacons be identified on the ground. Let the surveyor try to imagine out where this parcel of land is, and once that has been done, then for sure you know that the parcel of land is there. So before you start imagining that you can acquire a parcel of land, you have to engage a surveyor. That is a professional who deals with the land on the ground. It's extremely important. So matters of georeferencing, matters of mutation, matters of survey, matters of registry index maps are extremely important for any person who wants to invest in land as a homeowner or as a person who deals in land. So to the listeners of Spice FM this morning, before you purchase any land, make sure you have a professional surveyor who would go to the ground, inspect the parcel of land that you intend to purchase, pick out the beacons. If the beacons are not there, then ensure that they are fixed. If the land has never been surveyed, it means there is no land. And that is as easy as it can be. And the
you
less I
realize
see
that many people buy land, just on paper. So this land buying company has gone to Malindi, it has bought 40 acres of land, it's subdividing and it's selling plots. They have serviced them. There's Stima Iko Barabara ya Maram, and there's access road. And in fact, you know what, there's a police station that's nearby. So I mean, it's a very good place. And the future plans for this road is there's going to be a road that comes through this area. And people buy land. Are you saying that each of these people who intend to buy a plot and pay over 10 installments of 100,000 shillings each should first of all take a surveyor down to that piece of land, wherever? Because now we are buying land. We are sitting here and we are buying land in Mararal.
Thank you very much, Latif. I think it's extremely important, and I think listeners and viewers ought to understand this. Number one, this marketing that is being done on the media is very good. It's only good to the extent that the person who is marketing wants to do quick sales. But if you are a person who wants to purchase a parcel of land, if you want to invest in a retirement home, and that is where most of us are headed to, the first thing you must do is to request for a copy of the parent title. Whether the advertisements that are being done are glamorous, whether they are mouth-watering, whatever they could be, make sure that you have a copy of the parent title. Conduct an official search. Nowadays in Nairobi, you do it digitally. If you're outside Nairobi, do an official search at the Ministry of Lands, that is at the houses in the respective counties. That is number one. Let a surveyor subsequently conduct a search on the ground to ensure that what is in the title, because sometimes somebody brandishes a title. Yes, sometimes you're brandishing a title and telling people this parcel of land is in Machakos, but when you go to the ground, you discover that it is on top of another parcel of land with a different number. That is to say, you're purchasing their space, and their space somewhere up there does not belong to an individual. It belongs to the government, and above the government, I think, is probably God.
this country, if you start from Nairobi, head in whatever direction, head up towards Ngong, head towards Suswa, 50 by 100s are being sold. Head towards Thika Road, between here and I think all the way to Maralal, they are no, even beyond. They are selling 50 by 100s. Down the road to Nakuru, it's all being subdivided into these small commercial plots and they are being sold. Is this right? Is this procedural? Is there anything unlawful about it?
Thank you. I started by saying that land is a good investment, and I think historically and traditionally Kenyans were taught that if you do not own land, then you are not a serious person. But I do not know lied to Kenyans that if you do not own 50 by 100, even down there in agricultural lands, you are a miserable person. If you want to purchase a plot, and we're talking about an agricultural land, for example, 50 by 100, the law requires that before the subdivision is done, you must get consent from the Land Control Board. But that is not sufficient. You're also supposed to go through the process of physical planning, where the physical planner in the respective county goes through the previous regulations on whether on a certain area land can be subdivided, agricultural land can be subdivided further onto 50 by 100, onto 40 by 80, and such smaller subdivisions. There is a problem there. And I think Kenyans ought to know that if you want to purchase a plot in an agricultural land, you must get consent from the Land Control Board to transfer the land to yourself, number one, and for subdivision to be done, number two, and number three, you must go through the process of physical planning, because the way planning is supposed to be done is to ensure that agricultural land remains as large as it can be for purposes of ensuring that we have optimal production. So that subdividing agricultural land into 50 by 100 and then bringing up several houses and making it to be an estate, that is a high-density residential area, is against physical planning laws, and it runs afoul the law, and there is a big problem there.
Okay.
And something has to be done. I think the problem that we have, Madam Du and Latif, is that in this country, developments precede planning. Essentially, when you look at the Physical Planning Act, physical planning is supposed to go ahead of development.
Everything else.
Everything.
I want to ask a follow-up question to this. One, who's the custodian of the physical planning in every county? And number two, who sits on the Land Control Board?
Thank you very much. The custodian of the physical planning plans is at the national level, and it's at the county level. We've come up with a new act after the 2010 Constitution. I think that is the Physical Planning Act of 2012, which provides also in every county there is a county physical planning committee, which is headed by the county physical planner. At the national level, we have the National Physical Planner. We have the Office of the Physical Planner, the national office that superintends all the physical planning that is done in the country. That does not necessarily mean that the national office supervises what happens at the county level, because the county level is more exposed and it interacts very closely with what happens in the county. The problem as it is, and as I have said, is that in Kenya, things are done, development is done, and then physical planning follows several years later, if it ever happens. And as I have said, I know of a town in this country, in one of the biggest constituencies, one of the most productive constituencies, where the entire town, with very good developments, with serious people in this country investing in it, sits on an agricultural land. It is very sad. And I think
and they own plots.
People own plots. I know several people who own plots in terms of allotment letters.
Legally?
It can be legally, because there has not been any physical planning to convert agricultural land into commercial land. Yes, what they own really is letters of allotment, which in law is nothing. An allotment letter is an intention to give land.
Okay.
Yes.
Agricultural land used for farming, whether that be plant or animal farming, right?
Yes.
In order for agricultural land to then be deemed as commercial land, there's a process that must take place, right? Will the surveying aspect come into this again?
Yes.
Okay.
The surveying aspect is very important because once you convert an agricultural land into a commercial parcel of land, or you convert it into high density residential area or low density residential area, you need to go through a process. One of the processes is that you need to advertise so that people within certain area knows that this parcel of land is going to be converted into a commercial land. The change of user is going to be done, and that is why I think in the newspapers a lot of times you see change of users by CEC, land and physical planning in respective counties.
Okay.
Unfortunately, of course, as I have said, this is a problem that follows development instead of development following planning.
Okay, so now that this land has been turned, because just as an example, now that this land has turned into commercial land by value of the fact that, you know, the letter has been done and this has taken place, then this individual can go ahead and, you know, construct, do whatever they need to do, if it's homes, apartments, whatever. Can they?
They cannot.
Why?
They cannot because, number one, before development plans are approved, you need to demonstrate that there has been a change of user from agricultural land to commercial.
But haven't you done that by virtue of this survey having taken place and then the letter then been granted? Has that process not taken place?
It is a mishmash of issues, Ndu. It's a very sad situation because, as I have said, previously, before the 2010 constitution, you would go into the town council, you go through the committee on planning. The committee on planning, because of challenges over here and there, would not know that you are supposed to go through change of use. They would just approve your development plans. You bring up a building, 2-story, 3 building. There is no change of use there. This has not been subjected to the physical planning committee. It has not been subjected to the law. Even the parcel of land itself is still agricultural, and then you may decide to issue allotment letters to people on top of an agricultural land, because once a parcel of land is converted into commercial in a town, it should be converted from a freehold to a certificate of lease. It should be converted into a lease. Allotment letters issued subsequently should be subjected to survey, and the map should be amended. But I would shock you by telling you that you would find that the map is still intact at the Directorate of Surveys, but you would find buildings on the ground and people who have papers for allotment letters, and I would describe them as just that, papers. But the good thing is that nobody is enforcing the law, and for as long as we are not enforcing the law, we would remain as such.
So that's my next question now. So what if you had, you know, law-wielding, gunslinging individual who then came in terms of government and decided to enforce the law? What you're saying now is that thousands upon thousands of buildings could actually come down if that law was enforced. And the only reason why they are still standing today, or the only reason why individuals have not been reprimanding, take that as far as you want, is because the law is not being enforced.
Indeed, if the government of the day was to decide to enforce the physical planning laws, several developments in this country would come down. We're talking about property in billions and trillions. I don't know whether the government of the day would be able to take such a direction. I don't know whether the government would be wiser to take such a direction politically, because the consequences would be very dire. You would bring down buildings. Actually would not do anything else. You would have to decide now that we are not working anymore. We are going to bring down developments because there is no compliance with physical planning regulations. There is no compliance with zoning regulations, and people have built massive structures on agricultural land as opposed to commercial land. The problem is not with the people. The problem is with government officers. And as I said, the day we will deal with government officers in this country as expected, the way government officers will comply with Chapter 6 and ensure that public service is a position of trust which you are supposed to deliver and execute for the benefit of the people and the country, that is the day this country will prosper. As it is today, we have a problem, and the problem is not just a problem, it is an elephant of a problem. It's a legend of a problem. You asked me the question of land control board. These land control boards sit at the county level or at the sub-county level. Most of the times, as by statute, they are chaired by the deputy county commissioner or in each place an assistant county commissioner. Either it's the DC or the assistant county commissioner. And then you have representatives of the people who are gazetted by the Ministry of Lands. It's a committee of a number of people chaired by the administrative rank at the sub-county, or in some cases where it is centralized by the office of the county commissioner.
Who picks these representatives of the people?
The representatives of the people are picked by the Ministry of Lands, and they are subsequently gazetted by the Ministry of Lands. Yes.
Is there a law that says that they must be residents of this sub-county if they're sitting in the sub-county control board?
Yes, the requirement is that these are people who ordinarily reside, and these are people who are sufficiently exposed. But there is no competitive recruitment of these people. There is no public participation. And I think, as far as I am concerned, the Land Control Board Act was repealed in 2012. The only problem is that there was supposed to be a gazettement bringing into effect the repeal of that act, because it does more harm than good to most people in this country. So we have a law which has been repealed, but the repeal has not been effected. So we have a law that is operating, yet it was supposed to have been brought down by way of gazettement.
Why was there a need to repeal this? Why are you against the control board?
What we needed to do was to have a comprehensive approach to matters of agricultural land, moving from agricultural to commercial, to low-density residential, high-density residential. I think land control boards had become ovens for corruption, where so long as you can facilitate something, approval to subdivide, approval to transfer would be given. They would never visit the parcel of land. The intention, and I think this is extremely important, Madam Du and Latif, the intention of the Land Control Board Act was to ensure that agricultural land was not subdivided, was not fragmented into smaller pieces, making agricultural production in this country to be a nightmare. But what has it done? The Land Control Board has granted all the consents, which
was facilitated.
Yes, subdividing agricultural parcels of land to be plots that you are talking about, or 50 by 100, and then you find estates mushrooming in villages without drainage, a problem again of physical planning, a problem of the county governments and the municipal councils. Houses are mushrooming, there is no sewage, there is no water, there are no sufficient roads. Chaos, and this is the problem that we continue to perpetrate as a country.
Wakili, is this an issue of ignorance, or is it an issue of criminality here? Because one could say very easily, look, I entered into an agreement, I was buying a piece of land, and I felt that I could do whatever I wanted by virtue of the fact that the land now belongs to me. It could be an issue of ignorance. I mean, we're sitting here today and did not know that in order for land to change from an agricultural source to then a commercial source, that there's certain things that must happen, and then there's certain things that the law precludes you from doing. Is it possible that it is an issue of ignorance and not an issue of intent to do something wrong?
I would answer you straight. Kenyans are very knowledgeable people. This country is imbued with learned physical planners, and there are very many there everywhere. We have surveyors everywhere, we have land lawyers everywhere, we have valuers everywhere. Kenyans like shortcuts, and many of us are criminals. It's only that we do not say. We like to pray, we like to be seen to be worshipping on worship days, but deep inside us, I think the bulk of us are criminals. And I think we need to speak to ourselves and tell ourselves as Kenyans, let us stop this criminality. Let us follow the law and have a country that is organized. And what I think needs to be done, and this is something that has never been done, the land sector is in chaos. The land sector in this country is chaotic. And I think the people who benefit are the people who are high up there, and their friends, and that is why they do not want to breathe sanity. The day we would decide that we want to breathe sanity in this country, you would find estates with very clearly demarcated roads. You would find estates which have good sewerage facilities or plan for the same. But today, as it is, if there was going to be an inferno in most of the estates in this country, a fire extinguisher would not find a way to go and extinguish fire. I think these are issues that you report on a daily basis. It's failure of planning, failure of government officers.
Lawyers such as yourself, I presume that you are among those who participated in the demonstration last year, demonstrated against Arthisasa, the system. new system after a lot of work, digitization. Now we say, let's put our land registry onto this digital platform so it makes it easier for conveyancing, for dealing in land matters. But then you felt at the point that it was not functioning as it should. Has that improved?
Thank you very much. I want to say that the Law Society of Kenya, and I have served before as a council member for 4 years and branch chair for 2 years, supports digitization in this country 100%. What lawyers were raising and were challenging was a situation where the Ministry of Lands that time was undertaking a process, leaving behind critical stakeholders. And the demonstration was by the lawyers and the Institute of Surveyors of Kenya. We had our colleagues, our brothers and sisters from the Institute of Surveyors of Kenya, because they are also critical stakeholders. The problem was that a system was put in place, very little feedback, very little input from stakeholders, who even include the Kenya Bankers Association. As a result of which, the system was grounded. The system came down. You want to do a search, it takes forever. You want to register a security. Eric Latif wants to take a loan with Commercial Bank of Africa of 50 million shillings to purchase to purchase a retirement home somewhere in Runda or in Kileleshwa. But you can't register it because the system is grounded. We pushed the Ministry of Lands, we pushed the PS, we pushed the minister. We even went to court about 3 years ago when Alan Gishui was the president of the Law Society of Kenya, and nothing happened, and that is why there was a demonstration. Today, as we speak, because of robust engagements with the Ministry of Lands, with the PS Lands, there have been some marked improvements, but we are not there as yet. Otherwise, digitization would help to stem fraud, forgery, and duplication of titles that I have mentioned. Even it would help to reduce destruction of documents, so long as we have very credible persons as the end users on the other side.
What would you say to somebody today who may be in this position and would want to do the right thing, would want to, take up the due diligence, maybe having bought a piece of land and has then converted it unbeknownst to them about what they ought to do? All right, criminal desires aside, and really says, okay, I did not know this, I want to be able to fix it. What would they do in that instance today?
Thank you, Madam Du. If you want to purchase a parcel of land today in Kenya, wherever it is, whether you're in Mombasa, whether you're in Turkana, whether you're in Sholo, whether you're in Mount Elgon, number one, go personally to the ground and do what we call a historical search. Speak to the village elder. Speak to the assistant chief. Speak to some family members. They will tell you that this parcel of land is disputed or is not disputed. That is number one. Try to do some investigations. That is a historical search, which is going to be extremely useful, because sometimes you might find that somebody has a title, but the parcel of land is owned by the entire family, and therefore it is disputed to the extent that it's not owned by the seller alone. That is number one. Number two, engage a surveyor. Let the surveyor go to the ground, pick the beacons, and try to fix the title on the map on the ground. The surveyor will tell you if the parcel of land exists on the ground or does not exist. And we have so many parcels of land in this country with titles,
in the air.
Yes, which are high up there. They do not exist on the ground. That is number two. Number three, go to the Ministry of Lands, conduct a search, an official search. If you're not satisfied with the search, you can request for a copy of the register, which is called a white card for leases, or a green card for freehold titles. If you do that and you've involved a surveyor and a proper sale agreement has been done, subsequently get consent. If it is a commercial plot, you get the consent from the land registrar. If it's an agricultural land, from the Land Control Board, and you pay stamp duty. Many Kenyans do not want to pay stamp duty. Make sure that at least something is paid for stamp duty, and you keep those documents, because chances are, barring any other calamity in this country, there might be a case subsequently. Of course, I pray that there would be no case. Have a file for the process you've undertaken, and you would be very safe.
Yeah.
Boy. Okay. Due diligence is a very, very important thing, and it's a very big thing to do. How do you know what areas have been demarcated for agriculture or commercial, and must you go to the land registry to find that out, or can you just tell?
It's very easy to tell that this is agricultural land. Generally, areas in town are commercial plots. Generally, places outside the municipality, outside the cities, are agricultural land. But in the event that you are in doubt, please visit the Ministry of Lands at the house, do a search, and the search will tell you whether this is a freehold or whether this is a lease. It's very easy to confirm officially, so that you do not need to belabor. If you can't confirm physically, then you do a search, and the nature of the title, the nature of the search will tell you that this is agricultural land, this is not. But because of development, because of physical planning which is ongoing, and county governments are now zoning areas which initially were agricultural parcels of land and to commercial plots and to town plots. It may also be good to visit the physical planning section at the counties, and they will tell you that this area, Kitengela, which was initially an agricultural land, is now a commercial plot. So this is something that would require some bit of due diligence, but it's not difficult to ascertain the true position.
Leases do expire, and they have a maximum age of 99 years, right? Now, as you keep transferring ownership from one owner to another, you're not starting from zero. You're continuing with the tenure of the lease. So what's the importance of making sure that you're buying, you know how much time you have on the lease that you've bought?
Thank you very much. When we talk about leases, it means that there is somebody who owns the better title. That is the leaseor. There is also somebody who owns the lease, and that is the person who's probably selling the parcel of land to you. So when you look at the title, when you look at the certificate of lease, when you look at the certificate of title, you can tell that this is freehold, you can tell that this is a certificate of lease. And most documents, most of these certificate of leases will tell you that this lease is supposed to run from this period of time to this other period of time. If you are in doubt, you get a copy of the white card, and it would guide you into the future. I think it's very important for us to get a copy of that. Once you've confirmed that this is a lease, and it has expired, it's almost expiring, then don't be quick to purchase it, because in the event that it has expired, or in the event that it's probably expiring, the leaseor, that is maybe the county government of Machakos, or maybe the national government, may not want to transfer the parcel of land to you, may not want to give you the lease. So it's important for you to do due diligence, find out what is the remainder, what is the residue of the lease that you want to purchase.
Thank you very much. Kipkoech Ngetich is a land lawyer. He's been here teaching us this morning on our Justice Thursday conversation about land matters. Give it here for more conversations.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.